So here's what happened. Around 2:20, Harrison Ford was taking off in a vintage plane that he flies. He's a pilot. He's been a pilot for many, many years. He was taking off from Santa Monica Airport, and he immediately, almost right away, radioed back, which we have the audio on TMZ.com, where he says to them that the engine has failed, and he needs immediate turn around and return to the airport. The problem is he was right around Penmar Park golf course coming down to the runway, and the plane just didn't make it. So his plane crash landed on or near the 8th hole of the golf course, and Harrison was injured pretty badly. We're told that he had gashes on his face, his head, he was covered in blood. The fire department is saying it's moderate injuries, so he was conscious and breathing when they transported him here to a local hospital. But it was unbelievable crash type landing, and how he got onto that part of the runway and was able to survive this crash. And so far what we're told is he's still conscious and breathing and has made it.
All right, now the audio that you spoke about just seconds ago, is that between the control tower and the pilot and Harrison Ford?
Yes, exactly. You can hear Harrison Ford briefly say the engines failed, requesting immediate return. And that's all you hear from him. You can tell that, obviously there's problems in the airplane. The flight control tower tells him back that he's clear to go back and land at Santa Monica. And then at some point in the audio, you hear the controller say he missed the runway. And like I said, so he was literally just taken off and was not that far away in this plane. What's also interesting, Greta, is we looked it up, because Harrison Ford has been flying for years, helicopters and planes. He's crashed twice before. This guy has piloted crashing planes and helicopters and survived 3 times.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, Mike. The report to the controller that the engine has failed. Well, he's only got one engine, so now he's into whether or not he has, he's got enough altitude, enough glide to get back. I mean, I'm actually amazed that that the plane looks, that much in one, together. Obviously, you can't get a close up to see just how collapsed it is in the cockpit. But considering that report, I'm surprised that it looks as good as it does.
I couldn't agree more, Greta. We've got a bunch of photographs where you can see the plane is damaged a bit, but for someone who, like you said, has a one-engine airplane that the engine fails, the fact that he was able to pilot this airplane to a golf course where there's green, grass is, a far distance on a fairway, and get it to that area and not land on a house, or at least land the plane in a way that he's going to survive. This is not, and when I said before a vintage airplane, you're probably showing it, but this is not a normal jet airplane that you would think is flying. We're talking about a old war vintage airplane. The Army actually used them to train pilots way back when aviation was, in its early days. So this airplane, I'm sure, was very hard to pilot with no engine or it failing into a golf course safe enough to where you're breathing and have moderate cuts and bruises when you land.
Well, it's interesting. Looking at this plane, I take it he wasn't going anyplace. This looks like, obviously we don't know, but this looks like he was going out for a sort of a joyride. This is not the kind of plane where you go, it's not used often, I would think, for him for transportation, but merely for the enjoyment of flying. Do you know anything about, whether he was going someplace or, why he was flying today?
No, Greta, you're actually exactly right. He flies these airplanes as a hobby. He owns many of these airplanes. We actually have video on TMZ.com from a week ago. The exact same airplane, the one that he crashed in. He's been flying this airplane around. And from what we can gather from the video from last week and today, it appears that he just flies them. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles today, and out on the coast, he was, like I said, near Venice is where this crash is. So, over the ocean and in an area where it's really nice. So, yes, from what we can understand so far, from what we know, this was just a joyride, taking out an old airplane for fun.
And his condition, in the beginning, you look at the picture, he's taken away on a stretcher and it looks very ominous, but then you hear the description that he was conscious and breathing, which seems, of course, you can be very ill or very injured and be conscious and breathing. But do you have any more information about his condition?
Well, I can tell you that the first tip we got on this was that he was in critical condition. And I can tell you that luckily for him, there were 2 doctors that were playing golf on that hole that actually were the first responders. They were there treating him. I guess what they did was they were afraid in any accident like this of spinal injury, so they were able to get him stable with his spine and then get an IV in once the fire department got there. So apparently he was conscious, talking to them, and so the worst fears were that he could not move or feel his legs. Apparently that was all taken care of right away, that he was okay in that sense. Now obviously anytime something like this happens, they are very careful. They put him in the brace, they took him to the hospital, but right when I walked over here, I checked again with our sources who say that he's still conscious, breathing, and answering questions about what's going on, and some of the gashes on his face and head looked worse than they were. That's why they're calling it moderate.
Mike, thank you. And of course, TMZ got this one first, again, ahead of everybody else, and has got all the details as often as that happens. Mike, thank you.